they say that our field of view, as far as we can see, is about 3 miles out or so. And if you watch the videos that people are putting all over Facebook and stuff, showing, sailboats and whatnot going out to sea, and it's true, the hull, it does disappear first. However, the vertical perspective never changes. I mean, if it's going over the curve of a ball away from you, then the vertical perspective should indicate that the top of the ship should start to lean away from you. The mast has to have the vertical perspective. If the hull has disappeared, and some of these ships are pretty big, I mean, you're talking like 30, 40 feet or so are disappearing. So, I mean, if that much is being hid by an alleged curve, then that much of a leaning away needs to be evident in the visual perspective. But the vertical perspective never changes. There's videos out there showing people zooming across water, looking at New York City from 20 miles away. And yet, even though some of this, the lower levels, you can't see the street level because water's obscuring it, the buildings are all perfectly straight up and down. They are not in any way, shape, or form leaning away from you or leaning to the left or the right, as should be on a ball, because it curves not only away from you, but it curves to the left and the right. When Joshua Nowicki took the picture of the Chicago skyline from 60 miles away, and it's not a mirage, okay? If we want to talk a mirage, let's talk about how the water is obscuring the hull of a ship, or how the water is obscuring the lower levels of buildings and the street level. If you've ever been driven in the desert, you can see this wavy, it looks like water on the road way up ahead. The ground gets all distorted and gets out of whack. However, in the distance beyond that, the mountains are perfectly clear. They look just fine. Their perspective is as should be if it's on a straight plane. So we have an example as we're driving down. If you've ever driven through like Arizona or someplace like that, you've seen what I'm talking about. Up ahead, the surface is distorted due to the mirage.
Hello, I'm Robert Kraft. Welcome to the Experiment of the Week. This time I'm out in the Mojave Desert, and we're going to talk about the science of mirages. Now, first off, look at all this white stuff around me. It may look like snow, but actually, if we taste it, it's salt. This is a salt flat from an old dried-up lake bed. The salt was washed down from the rocks and the hillsides. The lake dried up, left behind the salt, and over long periods of time of more and more salt being washed in, we get these nice flat salt flats. Now, if you look out across the salt flat on the other side, it looks like there's water there, but there's not. It's just as dry over there as it is over here. The reason it looks like water is because of something called a mirage. Mirages are caused by a difference in temperature. We've got cooler air here and warmer air down here. If I put one hand here and one hand here, I can feel a large difference in temperature from this hand to this hand. As the sunlight comes down and hits that warmer air, it bends. Because the warmer air is less dense than the cold air, anytime light travels from one density to another, it will bend. And it's going to bend upwards. So as it comes through the cold air and hits the warm air, it bends this way, curving that light back up to our eyes. And so we see reflections of the hillsides, reflections of things over there that looks like light reflecting off water. But actually it's refracting off that layer of warm air. Now you don't have to go to a salt flat in the desert in order to see a mirage. You can see a mirage just driving along the road. Especially on a nice hot day, the road heats up, forms that hot layer of air right along its surface. And when you look ahead, especially on flat areas or as you crest the top of a hill, you'll see what looks like water on the road. But again, there's no water there. It's a mirage. that layer of hot air is refracting the light, bending the light up to your eye, so that you see what looks like the reflection of the sky and the things above the road. It's actually not reflecting, it's refracting up to your eye to let you see a mirage.
And I'm going to suggest that that's what we're seeing with the water, simply because in every single video that I've seen where somebody's looking across like the ocean or any body of water for a long distance, whatever is visible on the other side, whether it's a lighthouse, whether it's an entire cityscape, or whether it's a ship, the vertical perspective never changes. It's always perfectly straight up and down, which simply should not be the case if we're talking about a ball. And to this guy's point, Carpenter's point, if the ship is really disappearing, 40 feet of a hull or so is disappearing over an alleged curvature of a ball, then we're on a very small ball. I mean, let that sink in, because the ship's, when you start to see the hull disappear, it's 3 to 5 miles away at the most when it goes out like that. So, I mean, if you're losing 20, 30, 40 feet at 3 to 4 or 5 miles away, then it's a very small ball. But I'm going to suggest that's not the case at all, because when we see the ship go out, it goes straight down, hull first, straight down, but never changing in its vertical perspective. We never have the illusion of it going over the curve. So I'm going to suggest that what we're seeing is the same exact effect that we see when a car disappears wheels first into a mirage. I think that possibility is worth considering anyway.